He's Jamie Hunt.
He's Pat.
And we're here at the ESP showroom in Berlin.
Yes, and we're going to delve into a band that really stand out as having different ways to play guitar and orchestrate parts. So we thought we'd delve into the quirky world of Queensrÿche and see what we could share with you
Push
today.
it into the 90s.
Yes.
The intro, I'm just going to play it.
Go for it.
Because it came from a place of heart rather than thinking. And it was vibe and ideas. And I was trying to reproduce that sound on Empire and Mindcrime. So it's basically... It looks fairly complex. It's big and it's wide and it's stretchy and it moves around and it's got, you know, some troublesome harmony in there when you break it down. But actually, it's drama, which is what you said, because and it's a very sophisticated part. But it's very simple because it's just power chords. Now, this is what I really love about what these guys did, because power chords we think of as quite simply just...
Sounds awesome on some stuff.
Of course, yeah. I mean,
but you sound like lots of other stuff.
You sound
right?
like lots of other bands. Yeah. But what we do is we take a cleanish sound and we approach it a bit more delicately, and that is exactly the same as... All right, it's the same notes. It's a fifth, which is an interval, but it's played over a D note, a D string, and this is a great key to play this kind of parts in. And then what I'm doing is I'm moving this down 2 semitones, and I'm playing a C5 there, C5/D, or C5.
Yeah, because you're keeping that open D string.
That open D string. That's where the drama starts. And then to B flat. That's not a chord we talk about very often in metal, is it? B flat. And then back again. And I think that it's the... These are. Well,
that sounds like Maiden if you do that.
Yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, but they're also troublesome harmonies if you are in the wrong place. But with the D key, it's atmosphere. So that D string plays the role of a drone underneath moving chord progressions that you couldn't have if you were chugging away down the bottom.
But you go a layer further than that, right?
Yeah, go further than that. And this is what I love about Queensrÿche and those parts, is it's all about the upper extensions. So we've got this top high E string, Okay. Now this is something that we use, or I added in as just for convenience, really, to be able to use the guitar. And we've got. I like that vibe. And then. With a picking pattern that I made up. So we've got this drone, D, 5, C5 and B flat 5 over D, but we've also got an E note. Now, it's an extension. So D, if say D is the key or the tonic, the next note in the D scale is an E, which is the second. Could be called a sus2.
Yeah, because in that case we've got the power chord, the root in the fifth, and a 2, but no third.
But there's no third,
so therefore it kind of has that
suspended or a kind of neutral sounding chord, which we'll get into in another part as well. Right? So there is a D5 or D sus2, and then the C, when you add the E to the C, so C5, you get a C triad. It's actually a major triad.
Which is risky in a metal song.
Risky, but it's part of the contrast, isn't it? Of course, but with the D on the bass, so that is a C triad or C/D. And now we've got this B flat. This becomes much more complicated with the E. So in the case of D, it's the second, the third, and now it's the sharp fourth, because we're moving further and further away from it down the scale each time. So now we've got a sharp fourth, and that is a B flat, sharp 11 you'd probably call that, wouldn't you? But it's also got the D on the bass. So sophisticated harmony.
So you've got like D is like the third of the B flat chords. So you've got a first inversion of a B flat major chord with this added sharp 11 note we're creating this, in this case,
And it's one of those things that you'd put distortion on and you'd just go, nah. But actually, in the right situation with the right tone, it's working.
Sure.
But that brings you back in.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that's really important about that, I think, is, again, looking at the physics of what Pat's playing, in terms of what your fingers are doing, it's just one sliding power chord shape, right? So the open strings are doing the heavy lifting in terms of the harmonic depth. So I think a key thing to take from that is explore power chords against open strings. So many prog bands that want that kind of drama and depth and density in their harmony, use that. So, and you don't have to sound like Queensrÿche when you do this, it's totally transferable to different things, but the idea that you can take a power chord shape, apply open strings, and move your power chords and keep the open strings and just explore it. Let your ears decide where the power chords need to live against those open strings, and you'll create some really cool, clever sounding things. Cool. So over the top of that, again, because we've got that kind of dense, sparse sounding progression that Pat's got going on there, I wanted to create something that follows those chord changes but simplistic in its approach. So I've created a little descending melody which repeats, but to thicken that up, so I'm playing 10th fret, 8th fret, 7th fret and then repeating, but putting that D root note of the key against it, so that thickens it up, it becomes a dyad and it's got a bit more kind of weight to what's happening now, so we get...
Now you sound like Queensrÿche.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you sound like those particular albums.
Sure.
Anyway,
And then because the power chord shifts at that point, Pat's moved down 2 frets, my pattern shifts as well. And I'm going to play exactly the same pattern because that'll sit nicely with the chord. But it's important that I play the same thing because then we get a melodic sequence and our ears recognise the pattern. Even though it's moved to somewhere else in the key, the sequence, the pattern is still there. So as listeners, we relax and go, oh yeah, this is something that's familiar. So when I get to the next part, I move down 2 more frets. At this point, I can't play exactly the same thing because of what's happening in your chord. So if I was to play the same thing here, I get... Now that E flat note doesn't quite live with that chord, does it?
It's really important when you're creating 2 guitar parts, which differ in terms of your approach, your tone. If you've got a really important note, like the E in this case, or...
So prominent, isn't it?
Yeah, you need to maintain that with the second part.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to get really nasty harmony. So
to do that, I just modify my pattern. So instead of going down a tone, I go down a semitone, which is that E note. So against your, could you spell that chord for me? So then we just kind of ascend around.
There's still some struggle in there,
yeah,
which is cool. There's a bit of bite.
That's because the chord is already doing
exactly
all that work for us.
Exactly.
Right?
But
so let's put all that together. Let's hear those two parts. Ready? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Just the funky one. Brilliant. Then it goes back to the D. So the whole cycle goes around again.
At the end of my intro, I've got this part, and it's kind of almost a banjo-ish part.
Yeah, nice.
I finished with that.
Yeah.
That's where I brought you in.
Sure. So coming out of that section, we get something we're calling the bridge here.
Yeah.
Now, I'm playing something where I didn't want to play power chords. Come with that idea of Queensrÿche thinking around power chords. They use them here and there.
They do.
Quite sparingly. So to break away from that, I start with the power chord. And then move to fourths and thirds. So the idea here is I play a D power chord, and that fifth note in this case, the A, I'm going to keep as a constant. So I'm going to play this melody, then it repeats, and descends down to C on the variation.
It's kind of just up the scale and then down again.
But to give weight to that, I'm going to just, for the majority, play that D note against it on top of those notes. So. And then towards the end of the sequence, to give a little variety to that, because I've done it a few times, I descend down the scale instead. This time I get the D note as my constant, so
beefy.
So that has real nice depth and weight underneath what you're doing without just kind of moving fixed bar chords.
But I'm kind of still twinkling around over the top.
Sure.
I'm kind of playing with this D chord still. So rather than detracting, stomping on a stomp box and doing something completely contrasting, I'm trying to follow what you're doing, which is thicker, but with the part for some continuity, the part from before. And it sounds like this. So it's basically a D5 chord, playing an E on the bottom, and then an F. So all the time I'm creating this, and gradually a little bit more gain. And then a big C.
Nice.
Yeah. So should we play those together?
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do it all again. Nice.
So orchestration, big and small.
Or keeping one thing moving whilst something else stays constant, which we both explored in both our parts there.
Exactly.
So once we come out of that section, there's a little standout lick part that we harmonise, and it happens a couple of times in the track.
This was really kind of crucial with that 90s Queensrÿche, well, all the way through really, the two guitar line up with DeGarmo and Milton.
And lots of bands around that time were exploring guitar harmonies, the twin lead thing, in a kind of a fireworks sense.
Race Rex.
Yeah, like kind of
Race
Bill and
Rex
Ted
was
lick type.
To get a Bill and Ted, that's it.
Yeah, so those Bill and Ted licks. So again, Queensrÿche wanted to break away and have their own thing. So instead of going for the fireworks, they go for more kind of texture and kind of atmosphere around what they're doing. So we've gone for the D minor pentatonic, because if you're in the key of D minor,
Yeah.
is kind of the go-to, right? So, but to give it some range to it, do you want to show us your phrase first?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very simple pattern. It's something you kind of learn when you first start to play lead guitar.
Sequences,
It's something
lead
that a
licks,
good
yeah.
guitar tutor will show you how to do, because it's an easily practiced thing, or it's easy to practice.
Cool.
And then it takes you back to the root note. So we're going from here
Root to root.
to here. And if you put a bit of dynamics,
I notice you're down picking all of that.
Yeah,
Is that
I'm
to
trying
give
to
it a
do that.
certain.
just kind of how it came out there, really. I'm trying to actually turn that lick into chords in a way, or dyads and then voicings.
Yeah.
So I mean, it occurs again at some point towards the end. And it can become a part rather than a lick or just a single line phrase.
Sure.
So again, using the guitar, but you're doing something underneath.
Yeah, so-
and not a million miles away.
Yeah, so again, I'm staying with the pentatonic idea, and something I learnt the hard way is that if you want to harmonise something that's a pentatonic phrase, sometimes when you go to the go-to options, which is to move up a third in the scale and follow everything a third away or a fifth away, that works for lots of things, but often doesn't work with pentatonics. So the best thing to harmonise a pentatonic with is a different point of the pentatonic and follow through
same
your pentatonic
position,
notes.
same box.
Because then you do a blend of different intervals and it just kind of works. So I've followed that rule. So I'm taking the exact same sequence that Pat's playing,
sequence,
but from a lower point. So I'm starting on this C note.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So should we put those together?
So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so then you get that kind of textural thing, and it pulls you in as a listener to go, okay, they're harmonised and it's moving somewhere, and it feels like it's almost like a transitional phrase rather than a, spotlight moment. It's like we're moving on to something else.
Part of the song.
Yeah.
Part of the song, yeah.
Sure.
Let's come back to suspended. Suspended chords are, shall we say, ambiguous.
Yeah.
They're neither major or minor, and that is due to the fact that a triad needs really, a third.
Yeah, root third, fifth.
Root third, fifth,
notes,
traditionally, for a triad to be either major or minor. So we've got, I suppose a great way to demonstrate it is we've got a D major chord, a D minor, and then the minor third becomes a second.
Drop it down again, yeah.
So that becomes a sus2. So, all right, and you get this kind of, again, slightly stressed, but very neutral sounding chord. And that's what I come in with next, is this. And I'm literally moving up 3 frets, and then a big G, which is, it's just a way of playing all the guitar notes on the guitar with.
Well, again, you're muting out your fifth string, so there's no third in that
Yeah,
chord.
I'm actually taking.
Because you're putting a D note on your second string as well, so replacing where the major third would live. So again, by playing that and muting out the fifth string with the side of your second finger, we're still only playing roots and fifths.
And let's face it, there's some moments when we're playing rock music live, and one of those moments is to play a chord like that at the bridge and play it gently with the bar. That's a moment I'd look forward to in a set, definitely. So I'm doing this D sus2, and then an F sus2, and then G. And that's a very cool thing to be able to play, to be part of your parts. So what are you doing over the top of that?
Again, you've got these big chords that it's moving, it's got a sense of kind of direction to it, but because of the sus and the power chord approach we're taking on that G chord, it gives me options. So I want to kind of fit around that. So I thought, again, I don't want to go power chordy here, but I want to create a top line. So I'm visualising those chords, but taking kind of the middle bit. So over that D chord, I'm thinking about that D chord at the 5th fret, but just taking the middle 2 notes. So I end up taking something that's an interval of a 4th, slide into it. I'm actually hybrid picking this, which is a country thing. So I'm picking the 4th string, and then the middle finger of my picking hand, picking up that higher note. So you hear that separation. So again, you can get that, it's like the smoke on the water chord shape. Or if you separate those notes, you slide in, it starts to sound quite country straight away.
Yeah. I didn't actually know you were doing that.
Sure.
With the hybrid.
Yeah.
That's
Sliding
cool.
in, picking up that top note, get the bar on it, and it's got character to it, and then leave that 3 frets to the 10th fret, do the same thing, and then as you get to that G chord, I go to a major 6, which is against that chord, 2 notes from that chord shape.
That's right.
And then to reinforce that, because you stay on that G for an extra bar, I play the lower part of the G.
So you're playing some intervals with lots of character over my chords, which are just big, fat, with not so much character.
Yeah, but just big.
Should we do those together?
Sure.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Repeats. And then to finish up, I'll go back to my start notes again.
I did this pick slide because I'm into your part now.
Yeah, sure.
So
that kind of feels nice and complete, but the song then progresses. So those notes that I finish on, I wanted to hear those again, up an octave. Kind of develop it a little bit, but it's also because it brings my hand straight to the 10th fret, and I'm going to do a little lead part in D minor. It just so happens to bring me to the perfect spot for that kind of bluesy pentatonic type of approach.
Well, meanwhile, I'm back into...
Sure. So you're back to that intro sequence again. So I want this time as it goes round, instead of keeping it the same, it feels like it needed a melody at the top. So I'll go into those top notes. So what I'm doing there, I'm thinking that pentatonic, but again, because we've played a lot of sus chords, sus2s in particular, which is that second, I really played off of that second, the 9th of the scale, to keep that kind of flavour going. But it's rock, so therefore pentatonics, minor pentatonics never far away.
Yeah,
so I've got that little essence.
It's all blues.
Goes up to the minor third. And to resolve. Back to our bluesy.
Back to our D note.
For sure.
That brings me into a final kind of anthemic melody, and I suppose if you asked me to describe Queensrÿche in one word, it would probably be anthemic.
Yeah, for sure.
It's every song on every record, really, these anthems. And I kind of came up with this thing. It was just literally from this idea of experimenting, not knowing bags of theory, but being able to move things around. I like the idea of this D chord being up here. Yeah. And I started to play around with... And this is actually just a simple D5, and it's a power chord in a different place. And then I put in the third, so it's a D major. This is the C power chord over D, and then a major third again. So, a lick at the end. And then a minor.
Ah. Cool.
Just for character, just to confuse.
So you're playing all
people.
that major and minor.
Major to minor to major to minor, which is, it's easy and you can. I mean, that's a riff in itself, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
But push it up an octave, make
Separate
it into more
notes.
of an arpeggio kind of idea.
Line,
Minor.
Nice.
And that's kind of approach.
Catchy little theme.
It's a complicated approach over, not complicated, but a busy approach over something which is super simple for me.
Yeah, Pat's doing a lot there, and mentioned the fact that he's shifting major and minor thirds. So I've got to be careful in my part, because
not too busy.
I could play through that and create a mess or clash with some of those little things that Pat's playing around with. And the easiest way to stay out of the other player's way is to strip things back. So I just went for octaves. So again, I don't want to play power chords because we hear tons of other bands doing that, but the octave thing means that harmonically, I'm not getting in anybody's way. So I'll just stay on the Ds, because really it's D to C, back to D.
Yeah.
That's the movement, right? So I'm just playing with a little bit of palm muting on those lower notes. And then you played that turnaround phrase that you mentioned. Can you just play that one more time? This bit. Yeah, those notes.
Yeah, that's when you're moving.
Yeah, well, I went to my scale at that point and thought, if I play the same amount of notes from the C major scale over the C chord, I actually harmonise for a moment. So I go from octaves, staying out of the way, harmonising with you, and back out again. Yeah. So let's just play that little sequence. So
1, 2, 3, 4. Cool.
Yeah, so I go back to my octaves. Just play C octaves again over the C chord part. Again, staying out of the way. So my whole phrase is just moving around that under that section. So.
Should we put that all together?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. Sophisticated part writing from these guys, wasn't it?
Yeah,
really interesting.
My role here is really to weave around what you're doing and then harmonise at strategic moments.
Yeah. And we got a lick again at the end. Should we do that?
Back to our pentatonic
Back
ascending.
to our pentatonic. 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's D, so you've got to end with a D power chord.
Well,
you're allowed to play a power chord right at the end.
Yeah.
That's the rules.
Definitely. So if you wanted to compose not just like this band or anything in particular from that era, what would be your takeaways from how to use the guitar and play with this part and this part while writing riffs rather than solos?
So for me, the landmark things are power chords against open strings and moving those around, because then you get that really dense interesting harmony without melting your brain with theory.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is important from the bridge section was the idea of keeping a constant note whilst one thing moves. All that. And you did the same in your part. You played the arpeggiated chords.
And of course, if you want to take your guitar and you want to drop the low string right down to a drop D or a drop C and play these kinds of ideas, you can have the really heavy element in there as well.
So yeah, that's the key thing. All of these things we're looking at here, yes, it sounds like Queensrÿche, but the concept around it, totally transferable to different situations. So explore, see if you can avoid going to the typical metal guitar approaches and use those different intervals. And if you've got two guitar parts, or if you're recording and you want to create different parts, see how you can weave around each other with the different parts. But
use your ears
and
have a good time.
That's what it's all about. Have a great time.
See you next time.